When my daughter-in-law told me to leave the kitchen, I smiled instead of crying. I remember that moment very clearly. The room was quiet, except for the ticking clock on the wall. My hands were still wet from washing dishes that were not even mine. She did not raise her voice. She did not shout. She simply looked at me and said, "I'll take it from here. You can go sit in your room." Her words were soft, but the space between us suddenly felt very cold. That kitchen used to be my place. I cooked there for years. I laughed there. I prayed there when life felt heavy. And that day, standing in my own home, I felt like a guest who had stayed too long. I walked away quietly. I did not argue. I did not ask why. But inside me, something broke. Not loudly, just slowly. That was the day I understood something painful. A home can still have walls but lose its warmth. And sometimes the cold does not come from strangers, it comes from the people we welcomed with open arms. I am a mother of one son. I raised him alone for most of his life. His father passed away when my boy was still young. From that day on, it was just the two of us. Our home was small, but it was full of simple meals, full of quiet evenings, full of small talks before sleep. I worked hard, not to be rich, just to make sure my son never felt empty. He grew up kind, respectful. He used to ask me before making big decisions. He used to sit with me after dinner and talk about his day. When he told me he was in love, I felt happy. I really did. I remember the first time he brought her home. She was polite. She smiled softly. She called me auntie with respect. I cooked her favorite food that night. I wanted her to feel welcome. I wanted her to feel safe. I believed that when a woman enters your family, you make space for her in your heart. When they got married, they moved into my house. It was not a big house, but it was all I had. I told myself, this is how families stay together. At first, everything felt fine. We ate together, we talked politely, we shared space carefully. But slowly, the air started to change. Not suddenly, not clearly, just quietly. It started with small things. She rearranged the kitchen without asking. I told myself it was normal. A new bride wants to make space her own. She cooked separately. I told myself she needed time. She stopped asking me about my day. I told myself she was busy. But something felt different. When my son came home from work, he no longer sat with me first. He went straight to their room. Our conversations became short, careful, almost formal. One evening, I asked him, "Is everything okay?" He smiled and said, "Yes, Ammi, just tired." I wanted to believe him, but mothers feel things before they see them. I noticed how she spoke for him, how she answered questions meant for him, how she decided things that used to be discussed together.
Her words were sharp, but quiet. I nodded. "I was just letting you know." She looked at me then, for a long moment, and then she said something that changed everything. "You don't need to worry about these things anymore." The room felt still. My son looked down. He said nothing. That sentence stayed with me. "You don't need to worry anymore." I had worried for this house for years, for every bill, every repair, every meal. And suddenly, my concern was no. One night, at the dinner table, I said softly, "I was thinking we could visit your aunt this weekend." She looked at my son and said, "We already have plans." He nodded, without looking at me. That silence hurt more than words. I began to feel invisible in my own home. I started eating alone sometimes, not because I wanted to, because no one waited for me anymore. The house still had sounds, but no warmth. And every night, I asked myself quietly, when did I stop belonging here? Silence does not arrive all at once. It grows slowly, like dust in corners no one cleans anymore. I noticed it in the mornings first. I would wake up early, as I always had. I would make tea, 2 cups, out of habit, one for me, one for my son. But the second cup stayed untouched. He no longer came to the kitchen in the mornings. His wife made tea for him in their room, so I started making 1 cup instead. It felt strange, changing something so small, but those small changes hurt the most. At lunch, I would ask simple questions. How was work? Did you eat well? My son answered kindly but briefly. His eyes were often on his phone, or on her. She rarely looked at me. Not in anger, not in hate, just not at all. That kind of ignoring makes you question yourself. You wonder if you did something wrong, or if you are slowly disappearing. I tried harder. I cooked her favorite meals again. I cleaned the house more than needed. I stayed out of their way. I told myself, if I make less noise, maybe there will be peace. One evening, I asked her gently, "Is the food okay? Should I change anything?" She smiled politely and said, "It's fine," but her tone said something else. After that, she began correcting me. Small things. The towels go here now. The spices should be kept separate. We eat at this time, not that. She never said please. She never said thank you. I reminded myself, she is young. She is adjusting. But deep inside, I felt like a guest being managed. My own home began to feel unfamiliar. The hardest part was my son, not because he was cruel, but because he was quiet. When I tried to talk to him alone, he listened, he nodded, but he did nothing. Once I said softly, "I feel like I am in the way." He looked uncomfortable. He said, "No, Ami, please don't think like that." But nothing changed. He avoided long conversations. He avoided choosing sides. And in doing so, he chose one without realizing it. I missed the boy who used to sit beside me, who used to ask my advice, who used to care if I was silent. Now my silence went unnoticed. One afternoon, I entered the kitchen while she was cooking. Out of habit, I reached for the salt. She stopped me with her eyes. "It's covered," she said. Her voice was calm, controlled. I stepped back. That was when I understood something painful. She did not want help. She wanted control. From that day, I stopped entering the kitchen unless invited. I ate what was given. I spoke when spoken to. I shrank myself to fit into corners.
And still, the cold grew. One night it rained heavily. The sound reminded me of old days, when my son was young, when rain meant stories and laughter. I knocked on their door. I just wanted to sit together, just for a few minutes. She opened the door. She looked surprised. "We were about to rest," she said. I nodded. "I understand." As I walked back to my room, I felt something settle inside me, a heavy truth. I was no longer part of their world. I was just someone sharing the same roof. Some moments change a life without noise. No shouting, no crying in front of others. Just a few words, spoken calmly, that leave deep marks. That day started like any other. I woke early. The house was quiet. I swept the floor slowly, listening to the sound of my own steps. I told myself, today I will stay in my room. I will not interfere. I will not say anything unnecessary. But life does not always listen. Around noon, the gas stove stopped working. I noticed it first. I went to my son and said gently, "The stove isn't lighting properly. Maybe we should get it checked." Before he could answer, she spoke. "We already noticed," she said. "We'll handle it." That evening, she came to my room. She stood near the door. She did not sit. She said, I want to talk. I nodded. She took a breath and said, I think it would be better if you had your own space. I did not understand at first. My own space? I asked. She continued, You deserve peace. We are a young couple. Things are different now. Her words were careful, but their meaning was clear. She wanted distance. She wanted separation, not in anger, not with cruelty, but with calm certainty. I looked at my son. He stood behind her, silent. I waited for him to speak. He didn't. I asked only one thing. Is this what you both want? I looked at my son. His eyes were tired. He said softly, Ammi, things will be easier this way. That was all. No explanation, no reassurance, no promise, just that sentence. I felt something give way inside me. Not anger, disappointment. A deep, quiet disappointment. I nodded. If that is what you both want, I said, I will not stand in the way. She looked relieved. My son looked conflicted. I felt very old. That night I packed slowly, not because there was much to pack, but because every item carried memory. My son's school books, old photographs, kitchen utensils I no longer used. I folded my clothes neatly. I did not cry. Tears come later, when no one is watching. The house felt strange, like a place I once knew. In the morning, I stood near the door. My bag was small. My heart was heavy. She stood at a distance. My son hugged me, briefly. He said, We'll visit. I smiled.
I said nothing. Some promises do not need replies. As I stepped outside, I did not look back, because I knew, if I did, I might not be able to leave. I moved into my sister's house. She welcomed me without questions. She did not ask why. She did not ask how long. She just said, You are home. But even kindness feels heavy when your heart is tired. The room she gave me was small, clean, quiet. At night, I lay awake listening to unfamiliar sounds, different walls, different silence. I missed my old home, not the cold it had become, but the warmth it once held. Days passed, no phone calls, no messages. I told myself not to expect anything, but hope does not leave easily. Sometimes I would check my phone for no reason. Sometimes I would replay old memories in my head. I remembered my son as a child, his laughter, his questions, his hand holding mine while crossing the road. I asked myself quietly, where did we lose each other? The answer was not simple, and it was not only her fault. Life changes people. Marriage changes priorities. Time changes bonds. I had to accept that. Slowly, I built a new routine. I woke early. I prayed. I helped my sister in the kitchen. I started taking short walks in the evening. The world did not end just because my role had changed. I learned something important during that time. Love does not mean holding on tightly. Sometimes it means stepping back before you are pushed away completely. I stopped blaming myself. I stopped blaming her. Peace came slowly, but it came. One afternoon, months later, my son came to see me, alone. He looked different, older, quieter. He sat across from me and said nothing for a long time. Then he said, I miss you. That was all. No excuses, no explanations, just truth. I nodded. I never stopped missing you, I said. His eyes filled with tears. I didn't know how to balance things, he said. I thought staying quiet would keep peace. I reached for his hand. Silence does not create peace, I told him. It only creates distance. He listened. That was enough. He asked me to come back, not to live, just to visit. I agreed. When I entered the house again, it felt different, still cold, but familiar. She greeted me politely. No warmth, no hostility, just distance. And that was okay. Not all wounds heal the same way. I no longer expected things to return to how they were. Some chapters close quietly, and that is still an ending. I learned that motherhood does not come with ownership. Children grow, they choose their paths. I learned that silence can be painful, but it can also protect your dignity. And I learned that sometimes leaving is not losing, it is choosing peace. If you are listening to this and you feel pushed aside in your own life, know this: your worth does not disappear just because your role changes. You can love deeply without staying where you are not valued, and sometimes walking away quietly is the strongest thing you can do.